Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday Night Dharma Gathering. This is the first gathering of our new year, 2015. And as usual, previously, I just want to make sure everybody's sort of in sync and able to see and hear me okay. So if you are participating and you're able to see and hear what's going on, if you could just write in, what you want to do is open a second window in your browser and go to, in that window, go to facebook.com/davidnickturn, and then you can put in your comments and questions as we go along. For right now, perhaps some of you could just say you're here and reading it loud and clear. Okay. I just want to make sure that technology is working. Sometimes they change little things like this, and let's just check in, everybody. Open a second window in your browser. Go to facebook.com/davidnickturn, and you'll see the postings starting to happen. Yay, there's some people. Okay. Makes me feel a little bit less like the last man on planet Earth in Outer Limits or something like that. So Mike Henderson is here. James Moore is here. Greetings to both of you. Again, if you are watching and listening, and if you could just open that second window in your browser, go to facebook.com/davidnickturn, and let us know that you're here. Mike is saying that he's seeing and hearing us fine. Love to hear from some more of you before we get started, especially since there's been a gap, and I know a bunch of you are planning to come along. So please chime in at this point. Let's test the system, see if it's working. Okay, great. I'm seeing some more. All right, now we're cooking. Everything is good now because Christy is here. Christy Kravitsky, are you in Brooklyn, Christy, as you sometimes are? Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy to be here tonight. John Cunningham is here in Scotland. Oh, great. Great to see you back. Likewise. Debbie Gillian, Laurel Onason from Winnipeg. Our usual sort of international conglomerate is gathering. And we'll just get started in just a moment or two once we see that we're underway. Okay, I'll assume that since those of you have said you're here, can hear and see, that the rest of you are lurking. And please do just open that second window in your browser, go to facebook.com/davidnickturn, and let us know, even as I'm talking, that you're here and able to participate. And as we go, any questions or comments you have, you can just start typing them in there, and then of course we'll have the usual time for them at the end. We'll spend the last section of the talk going over those. So moving into recording mode here. For some reason my computer is delaying every movement. There we go. Okay. So now we're also recording for the archives. So, first of all, I want to wish everybody a very happy and healthy New Year 2015, which, if you're as old as I am, is now kind of almost later 2015 than any science fiction book I ever read as a kid or a young adult. There was 1984, there was 2001, then there was the sequel to that. We've gone past the breakers of what anybody would have considered the future back then. So we have to keep pushing the future back. That's one of the things that if you're operating in real time, you have to keep pushing the future back because it keeps catching up with us. So I don't know what kind of year this will be. It's hopefully something that will bring you closer to doing that which will enable you to meet your own aspiration. So in that spirit, we're not looking at getting closer to the goal. We're looking at getting closer to the work that we need to do to approach whatever goal we might envision. And that's a different kind of a horse of a different color. And so I've kind of had it come into my mind as a usually little landing strip there, that we're as a group, maybe, and personally, individually, and maybe for the students that I'm working with more closely, the motto or the theme for this year is going to be going deeper. Of course, going deeper, meaning with your practice, with your meditation practice, but that, of course, also means going deeper with your life and the meaning of it, exposing the meaning of it, unveiling the statue that is lurking in the marble. And so I hope that we can share that kind of sensibility. Of course, it's often the case that in the beginning of the year, people have that sensibility of New Year's, aspirations and resolutions of all kinds. So maybe it's quite natural. But I'd like to see, personally myself, and all of us could hold that thread a little longer than the usual 2 weeks where we join a gym and then never go for the rest of the year, still paying the dues. You probably know that gyms and fitness centers and yoga centers do a big percentage of their business in January, and people sign up for the year, and then by March, of course, they're really not showing up all that frequently, if at all. So our gym, is the meditation gym, and we've often used the analogy of, we know what it means to develop kind of a regimen of physical health and fitness, and we've bought, if you're listening to this talk, we probably bought somewhat into the concept of developing, spending some time and energy developing mind fitness, acuity, and stability. But if we look at how we spend our time, we might easily notice that our mental fitness, our mind's well-being, our heart's well-being sometimes takes a back seat in terms of what we actually spend time cultivating. So I think our tradition, as most of you know, favors a deepening of practice and study as we go along, and you could say warns against a kind of casual or cavalier or too eclectic, in the wrong sense, approach of skipping from practice to practice, from teacher to teacher, and never really kind of landing anywhere. So we've sometimes talked about that in terms of spiritual materialism. We've talked about it as the notion, like Pema says, of sticking to one boat. And it seems in general the idea of going deeper also means sticking with an approach, a particular lineage, a particular practice. So that's going to be something we're going to explore tonight in some depth, I hope. It's an oldie but goodie, you could say. It's a good theme. And in fact, even if you were right now wishing, I wish he would talk about something else, that's exactly indicative, of our really relentless desire to find new landscapes, new fascinations, new topics, and it really comes from a kind of restlessness that we take to be adventure, and it's worth inquiring more deeply if our restlessness is not just exactly that. Now, you might say, but that kind of restlessness is why people have landed on the moon and stuff like that. And that's if you were James T. Kirk on the Starship Enterprise, you'd be saying, yeah, but that's what drives us forward, and that's what makes us seek to boldly go and seeking out new adventures. But I think let's accept that as a good thing, but let's look at the other side of the coin, which is while we're putting people on the moon, what exactly are we doing here on the Earth? What exactly are we doing here? So the notion of always going to a new frontier, always looking for the next experience, and then somehow not really ever properly taking care of, mindfully and full-heartedly taking care of the kind of earthy present reality that we have, might be worth, sort of reevaluating in terms of where we put our priorities. So, we could talk about it. I'm just looking a few notes things I want to mention. We might talk about it in terms of actually simply digging in and practicing more. Practicing meditation, whatever practice we're doing more of it, going more deeply into it, understanding it more deeply, studying more. I've said this really frequently, but in the yoga world, in which I travel and teach quite a bit, and probably other realms like it, and in the meditation world maybe, but not as much, the notion of a teacher training program will get you more students than an actual training program. So the idea of somebody being trained as a teacher is very appealing because it generates a kind of sense of maybe increased value to that person, maybe a possibility for generating livelihood, for being a leader, even for being a star or whatever you have in your mind. So teacher training programs are very, very popular. And I've often said that if the teacher training program was like the kind from our vintage lineage here, Trungpa Rinpoche's teacher, Khyentse Rinpoche, spent 15 years in a cave. I always refer to that as like, would you sign up for a teacher training program if that was one of the requirements? So now that's one side of the spectrum. The other side is we're trying to develop a nice, balanced, secular, spiritual dynamic in which we don't hyperventilate on the kind of spiritual equation, but we bring it to bear to everyday life. We've talked about that a million times, everyday living, and business and relationships. And so somewhere there's a happy medium. But for now, we're really looking at all the habits we have of, really back-burnering our practice and getting onto the fact that our logic is not so good, really. The kind of barrage of excuses and rationales, and which is really our that's where it becomes slightly criminal, let's say. We're only human, we do what we can do. But when we start to justify it and sort of, develop a logic and a rationale for why we're not digging into our practice deeper, then it becomes a little more toxic. Would you agree with that? I don't know. Maybe. Of course, we'll have time to discuss that. So, since we're here, I just want to remind everybody that this is the Tuesday Night Dharma Gathering, and if you want to participate, as it says, you have to open a second window in your browser, which I see a bunch of people have done now, and go to David Nichtern, facebook.com/David Nichtern, and then you can participate. So I see I'm thrilled, you could say, to see a lot of the people who participated for the last several years that we've been doing this. Maya's there from Toronto, Kathleen Sullivan from Massachusetts, Dan from Kalamazoo, of course one of my favorites, Kalamazoo, Lori Fleming from Southern Virginia, Grindle from Stratford, Ontario, Mary Jo Stewart from Bainbridge Island, Martha McGuire from the Hudson River Valley, Priya is here from New York, Neely's here. So this is great to see everybody. I just want to take a minute and hope, maybe not hope, but aspire that some of you I get to see in the flesh in the next month or so, where there's kind of quite a few workshops, and I'll mention those. But I'd really, think that it goes with the theme of going deeper and doing some of the retreat practice, but also getting to hang out in person and see all of you that I've kind of been sharing this with over the last couple of years. So there are many approaches, many ways to say this, and hopefully none of them have the idea of guilt attached. I think we've had enough guilt, and it's interesting, most like sort of emotionally colored things are somewhat co-emergent, and they have like a positive and a negative quality. But for example, I've heard certain teachers say guilt has no redeeming qualities at all, because it's connected with sort of feeling bad about ourselves and shameful, and then sort of motivating from there. So let's agree to not assume that I'm guilt tripping anybody, because I'm not. And we're just looking together for a creative way to find our through line to our enlightened qualities, our best qualities. Because we're all good people, and we have that aspiration, we share that aspiration. So in that vein, tonight we're talking about the power, really, and importance of beginning to stick to and dig deeper into the practices that we already have been given. So that's assuming we understand, we have some understanding about the practice and what it's working with, how we're working with our mind and our heart and our life and our body, and that once we've recognized that we don't then second guess, third guess, and dilly-daddle forever. And then one day find ourselves kind of lying on the floor looking up at the ceiling, wondering where our life went, with a sense of regret, which can happen, by the way. That does happen sometimes. So we're trying to take the powerful insights that we ourselves have had and put them into play, into motion. And that requires kind of grit, I think, is one of the qualities, because it just makes complete sense, if you think about it, that if you're going to lean in to becoming more wakeful, more mindful, more aware, more compassionate, that what we're going to encounter along the way is all of the thick weave of habits that we've created over the years, like amazing construction, for not doing that. And that we're going to go face to face the minute that we dig in deeper and try to meet our mind in some kind of realistic way, know ourselves more deeply, and also in a way uproot. It's like weeding, uprooting some negative habits that we've had. What could they be? As well as I, procrastinating, laziness, too much aggression, too much impatience, a sort of craving mind, too much hunger, too much need for entertainment and shifting landscapes and so forth. So, we're looking how can we energize that and there's a lot of things to say about this. One of the things that Trungpa Rinpoche used to say so much was scheduling. Actually having some sense of how time goes. Because, it's interesting, you could wake up in a day, this happens to me quite frequently, I think, I've got all the time in the world today. I've only got 3 Skype sessions, or I have to go to the cleaners, or do some business or whatever. And it seems like there's an open expanse, and then the day just kind of creeps by, And for us, I think this conversation tonight should just be fairly literal about getting our formal practice strong. Because I think everybody here knows that without that, a lot of the talk about post-meditation and meditation in action, or I meditate when I swim, becomes really unmoored, really it's like when they turn off the gravity in a spaceship and everything just starts to float around. It's all there, but it's floating. So we become ungrounded. And one of the most grounding aspects of the practice is that we take a very strong physical posture. Actually, the posture itself is enormously important. The way we would call this in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the mindfulness of the body. How is our body set? How does it feel? Are we actually in it? How does it feel to breathe within that body? To feel the sense perceptions? To feel the strength and energy and vitality of it? Feel the power of it? Resonate with that? And then notice how our chi gets sucked up into our mind and leaves that kind of settled feeling, and then starts racing around with a lot of thoughts, and it can be dharmic thoughts, any kind of thoughts. And the thoughts have like little wings on them, and they start to fly around. So the body, the embodiment, is kind of the most literal way to relate to practice, as being in the body and present in that way. It's the most ground that we have. So it's interesting, back in the days, Trungpa Rinpoche used to say that most of us don't actually experience body in a clear way. And what we experience, he called psychosomatic body, mind body, a version of the body that we're holding in our mind, whatever that might be. You can see that a lot in the gym, And he said, only enlightened beings experience body as body. And, it is something you see in great teachers. It's not a question of being strong or athletic or something like that. It's they're in the body in a way that's very relaxed and strong. So there's not a sense of the mental activity flying away with us. That's one of the main things that we're really working with practice, is putting an anchor down, putting a stake in the ground. And it's very much symbolized by sitting on the ground, taking a seat on the ground. And at the same time, because we can feel that groundedness, we can feel tremendous space around it. So those are our two, bookends, or two containers of our practices. This tremendously powerful feeling of being grounded and stable. And then, what we sometimes called sky mind, open mind. It doesn't have to have a lot of thoughts in it. It doesn't have to, be holding a narrative together. It's just kind of pure awareness and that grounded quality together. So, when I think of Trungpa Rinpoche, it's very easy to evoke, you could say, that kind of mix of a very powerful earthiness and sky mind, and other great teachers as well. So, what's the obstacle, to going more deeply into the practice? Is one, and we could just look, maybe take a naive, sweet, unambitious look at that, and just figure out a practical way, knowing who we are, if we're a highly scheduled person, if we're more of a improv kind of style. Find your own style, find your own way, and put the numbers up on the board. Now, this gets really easy if you have a calendar and you enter into it, because then there's absolutely clear, and with most of my students now, we're working with a calendar and actually entering how long did you actually practice for. And it completely cuts through any I sort of did it, I read today, or I studied, or I did this, or I did that. So the idea would be similar to reps, putting in some reps in a physical sense, actually doing some training and doing the reps. So that would be kind of one dimension of it. And then the other is what really taking inventory, again, a second type of inventory. What are we really doing? What are we really looking for in our spiritual journey and therefore studies and practice? And if it's always got a feeling of ambition and wanting the next teaching and the higher teachings and the the special moment and the secret moment and the esoteric, fascinating aspect of it, we should put a thermometer in our own spiritual mouth and take our own temperature on that. Because is that really what this is about? Is that really what this is going to be about? Or are we sort of making contact in a real way with our actual being? And that requires a kind of opening that's so different from ambition. And, in the language we use, you could say ambition is sort of the ego weapon, and opening our heart and mind is just a genuine gesture. It's not a superficial or empty gesture. So let's just pause there for a minute. I do want to invite you or re-invite you, if you're watching as usual or for the first time, that if you go to facebook.com/David Nichtern and you see the list of comments there, that's where you can enter your comments and questions as we go. So please feel free to put them in now. I will be getting into them in maybe 10 minutes or so. We'll look at the questions. So if you want to start sneaking them in there, get a head start, or things you want to discuss more. I just want to say, just straight up, as I've done, Buddhist practices of various kinds over the years, and noticed a thread going through all of it of boredom and resistance. And, obviously there's moments of inspiration and kind of energy coming through, and wakefulness and brilliance and kind of appreciation. But I think those are when it pops, that's what you feel. Practice doesn't really feel like that. The practice feels like grinding. When I was in high school, I ground a mirror for the lens of a telescope. And it's just grinding. Like if we're doing shamatha meditation and just coming back to each breath, or any kind of mantra repetition of things. There's going to be a time in the middle of it where you go ugh. And that is such an interesting moment. If you can bring your mind to it what exactly that experience is, because then you're tasting the resistance to really being there that we have built up over millennia. Each mantra, each breath. Because if we lose the idea that it's going to take us someplace better than this, and you can see how that is a fundamental dupe, like a shell trick. Which of the three shells is the actual coin under? If we can just recognize that's the best moment in our practice, is that moment where the rock hits the bone and we realize we have to lean in and just simply stay with the technique or return to the technique. And in a sense, it almost doesn't even matter what the object of the meditation is. That the raw experience of bringing our own awareness back into a very tiny dot. And that is why Buddhism is fundamentally more boring than most other things that we would do. But if you take the Buddhist approach, for example, to practicing guitar, which that is another form of practice, or practicing Tai Chi, or practicing running a marathon, it's such a seminal moment when you realize you've been pulling away from the experience you're having, and just to come back to it one more time. It's the most powerful divergence and convergence that we have. It trumps any form of connecting to an external object of any kind, because it's the mind returning to itself. It's awareness returning to itself. And there's a certain kind of permanence or eternal moment there. Sometimes we call it different things, but there's a letting go of any expectation, of any anticipation, of any dream, any thought form, any emotion, and a complete opening into the naked moment. We're just so not used to that level of simplicity. So, a couple of other, ideas is the notion of credentials is sort of fascinating to me in terms of spiritual world. Like when somebody becomes a famous teacher, people kind of almost pre-configure their exchange with that person. I mean, it's kind of amazing, like if you have a chance to meet the Dalai Lama or somebody like that. And if you can weed your way through your own. It's been very interesting for me to hear about people who met him, or people like that, who didn't know who they were, or who they're supposed to be. Because in a way, that's like Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, how many of you would follow me if you had just met me in a bar? In other words, follow in the way and become students. So in a way, this is a powerful, when you can just sort of strip away all the credentials. That's when the lineage becomes really powerful, actually, because the lineage shines through more in the absence of credentials than it does by just reciting titles and, incarnations and things like that. So the greatest yogis, they don't have credentials. even the great lamas who do have credentials don't have credentials, because their experience of moment-to-moment reality is so vivid that that's the compelling thing. And the credential is just a signpost that, hey, there might be a great, mindful, powerful, compassionate being in this particular robe or in this particular suit of clothing. So the whole idea, which was also a strong idea with Trungpa Rinpoche, was the Buddha Dharma without credentials. It's something we could easily forget, and it's a tricky piece of business there. And I think the way that Rinpoche used to say it was, we should be willing to be a grain of sand, that little self-importance. But, sometimes the grain of sand has to be a leader, to be a good grain of sand. Has to manifest something. But it's not like there is a need there for recognition or being seen in a particular way by others. One takes one's own counsel. We evaluate. At the end of the day, we have to let go of what we think other people think about us and be the best version we can be for our own sake. So the credentials thing, if you can imagine the idea of lineage and empowerment, but that it's based on real power being transmitted rather than just credentials being brought further along. So I think that's an important to mention here also. And then finally, last thing I want to say, and then I hope we can get into, well, there's two things I want to say. One is to really understand the extent to which our modern life has given us all ADD. And the endless stimuli that we are facing as modern people, and there's no way to reverse it. We can't go back to the land and all become, wilderness bops. Unless we destroy our environment, we have to. There's 7 billion people on Earth right now. Most of them live in big cities, or at least a fair percentage of them do. And we have endless stimuli. So the meditation's almost like a counterweight. And we should take it as such that we, at least for the history of our species, leave some time aside to not be overstimulated and allow some of the wiring that we have to just kind of like settle down. Just almost at the physical level of being wired, and then allowing some space for the wiring to calm down and just the awareness to be there, but without the frantic need for objects of perception and thoughts. It's almost like the antidote. We can apply it even self-consciously in that way. So, and then finally, the last thing I want to say is, whenever we talk about going deeper, we automatically are talking about width and expanse. So I just want to be clear that when somebody says you should dig in, work with a particular lineage and teacher, stay focused with your practice and stay on course, that does not mean the whole point of that is by, as you know, the deeper the center pole of your tent is, the broader you can expand it. That's relationship between the depth of the center pole, which is our practice and our lineage and our tradition, and then being able to be very expansive and open and inclusive of other traditions, other people, free of any kind of arrogance, and curious and very curious about things. But those two things go together rather than fight each other. It's kind of a yin and a yang. So we talk about depth and width, or expanse, and really they complement each other. So I just kind of want to make that point, lest you think that there's a conflict brewing there. So I think, that's a few thoughts to share. I just want to let you know we're back, with these gatherings for probably another 4 weeks, next Tuesday nights. So if you want to get warmed up, I'm gonna, 2 topics already came into my mind, so I'm sort of stubborn about it, wanting to do them, which was this dedicating 2015 to going deeper. And the next week we're going to talk about sacred embodiments. The idea of, can't just ignore the fact that Tibetan Buddhism is just filled with deities, and I want to just talk a little bit about that, which could be an object of fascination, and how could we make a very strong, connected relationship to understanding what those represent. So that'll be next week. And then before we get in, by the way, you can now start writing in your questions and comments. So facebook.com/David Nichtern, second window in your browser, write them in. But while you're doing that, I also want to mention that the next 4 weeks I'm, in a variety of places in the mostly Northeast, all Northeast, but really doing some weekend programs, and I'm hoping to see some of you if you can make it. The one that's probably the easiest for people to come to from far away is Kripalu workshop, which is January 30th, 31st, and February 1st. But before that, I'm going to be back in Cleveland, which I haven't been there for quite a while, at Evolution Yoga, and doing the Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck workshop there. And that's January 23rd to 25th. On the 21st, I'm doing an evening class at the center in Katona. These are all posted, but I'll post them all again. So let me just give you the right context for these. You can see these by going to my website, davidnichtern.com, and there's a calendar there. So schedule, just click on that, and we have, January 21st is Taming Your Wild Mind at the Center for Health and Healing in Mount Kisco, New York. Sorry, not Katona. Melanie Ryan's new studio. And January 23rd to 25th is Evolution Yoga in Cleveland, Ohio. And the Kripalu weekend is Super Bowl weekend. And then February 6th to 8th, meditation teacher training in Wilmington. So that's a good, if any of you feel ready to sort of undertake getting a little training how to present Dharma to others. And then finally, February 13th to 15th, Shambhala training level 1, co-taught with number 1 son and now engaged to be married, Ethan Nichtern. So that's always a bang-up weekend. That's February 13th to 15th in New York, Shambhala training level 1. So I hope to see you all at one of those if you're anywhere in the hood. And now let's take a look. Let's see if people have come up with any questions or comments based on the idea of going deeper or any of the things that have been said. Let's see what we've been talking about here. Okay. Let's see what you guys are cooking up over there. Okay, quite a few. And as you know, or if you're new to this, side conversations are encouraged and allowed, and you can take them off campus and continue to, if you find somebody who's following a thread that you're interested in. So let's see if anybody's got any questions coming up. Teresa May Funk is saying recognition credentials is arbitrary. I wouldn't say it's entirely arbitrary, it's relative maybe. Does it matter to the universe what title we hold? Well, if our mother is part of the universe, the answer would be yes. anyhow, I think we know what you mean, Teresa, by the thread you're going there, and can follow that along. Kathleen Sullivan is saying, can we go a bit more deeply into Hawaii? Only as spiritual practice, of course. Or can you give us a minute or two about how your Hawaii trip was? Yeah. Well, we can go more deeply into Maui specifically, which is, as some of you know, I was there playing with Krishna Das at a retreat with Ram Dass and Jack Cornfield, and 6-day retreat. Beautiful, beautiful retreat with a kind of nice variety of offerings, kirtan and Buddhist meditation and satsang with Ram Dass. 450 people at a resort. Honestly, really hard to beat. And the reason I'm mentioning is because there's another one coming up in the end of April, early May. So if you look on Krishna Das's website, you can see that there, probably on Ram Dass' site also. And we'll be there again. So if you got one, 5 nickels saved up and it's all gone to one vacation at the sort of as spring is breaking, we'll see you there. So I hope that it was a very beautiful time, really, really fun. And Maui is off the charts, unbelievably beautiful place. I sort of made up my mind to kind of revisit it periodically as often as possible, short of moving there, which I think we'll stay short of that for a moment. Let's see what else people are cooking up now. Stephanie Saba, New Year's blessings from a cold and snowy Midwest. Wow, you guys really are all over the place. Maka Hansen from Norman, Oklahoma. Let's see. Who else is writing in? Okay, here's Joe. Joe Bundy, great talk tonight, David. Even though you are speaking about our wiredness, I didn't want to miss the talk, and so I used my Ustream app to listen to you as I drove down the ski mountain this evening. Well, as long as you're not listening while you're skiing down the ski mountain, I guess it's okay. I really believe that listening to these weekly talks helps me to continue my daily sitting practice. Thanks for this gathering. Wow, Joe, that's just terrific to hear. Great to hear from you. Wish you were going to be in the East Coast sometime soon so we could see you. But I'm sure sooner or later you will be. Well, thank you for those comments. Glad to hear that. Let's see what okay, Ari Summerlin saying, thank you for the observations regarding credentials and great teachers. Some of the best teachers I've ever had were, for lack of a better phrase, rather lightly credentialed, but had just been practicing and practicing rather than gathering pieces of paper. They're the ones that have stuck with me rather than the ones with lots of letters behind their names. Yeah, I think it comes in all shapes and sizes, but I know what you mean. Then there's sort of hidden great teachers who actually do have a lot of credentials, but they don't blow them. They don't present them necessarily always. So Maka is saying, I am so excited about this topic. Deepening my practice is an important aspiration. Okay, great to hear that. If you are watching this on the archives, which many of you do, it should be apparent, but I'll just mention that you can't write your comments in live in real time. That's why I'm reading the comments so we can all stay up with it. Lori Fleming is saying the Insight Timer app can help to keep one on track of daily practice. And then that got 7 replies, so we know you're not alone. Ari uses it. Rebecca uses that. Lori Fleming. Okay. Ari said, David, I created a group Tuesday night Dharma Talks last fall, but never promoted it here. I hope folks will join this year. That'd be terrific. I use the same name on that app if anyone wants to try to find me. So anybody who wants to find more about that, you can contact Ari directly. Okay. Let's see if there's any more questions. All right. Okay, Mary Willing is saying, is it inadvisable to pull the cushions up and practice right on the bed after the alarm goes off in the morning? Is that lazy? I don't think so. I think one of the things about sitting on a bed, I sometimes in hotels and things, because I travel a lot, I sit on the bed, but I really give myself a proper seat and a cushion and make sure my posture is not sinking into the bed, but that I have some kind of support. Sometimes you can even use, the harder cushions from the couch. I've done that a million times out of necessity. So no, and I think once you do, you settle in, and especially not leaning back and kind of like half meditating. But if you take that posture and you clear it away, maybe it's better if the bed's not a total mess and your room's not a total mess, so there's some sense of decorum about the whole thing. But, I think taking the seat, Buddha used to just sit on a piece of grass, kusha grass, out in the field or under a tree. It's how the Bodhi tree got its name. So I think we should stay with the form, but maybe it doesn't have to be so formal. Let's see who's got other things to say. Rebecca Nanovic Lynn is saying, although I wish to deepen my practice, I'm finding it a challenge as a mother with kids with busy schedules and college applications and auditions. How to find the time without escaping to a retreat? Yeah, that is, of course, a great question. And I would say the students that I work with one-to-one, almost all are family people or business people or have jobs. And different people have had different solutions. One mom has 3 kids, yoga teacher, Catherine Sanford, if any of you know her. And she gets up at 5:30 every morning, just before the onslaught. She sits, practices, and does some study. Amazing, real discipline. So I think, if the will is there, I'm going to suggest, Rebecca, even just trying to start with 15 or 20 minutes 4 or 5 times a week. That's the kind of Dr. Nickturn prescription. That's a good practice. If you really look in your book and you've sat, 4 or 5 times a week, 15, 20 minutes, and then you can sit longer, maybe on a weekend or when your husband can take the kids, you give yourself a longer session. And then periodically we do some group retreats. Practice. It's very, very good. Amazingly powerful. And you've really mixed it with your life, which is very powerful because it's part of your life as opposed to having 2 parts to your life. You've integrated it. And that's our style in Shambhala. That's really our style. Jenny is saying, why does it have to be a second window in my browser? That's the hard part for me. Jenny, if you're still there, I'm not sure why, but we can certainly discuss that sometime. You just open another window because Ustream doesn't have the capacity to keep up with us, apparently, in terms of putting the comments right below in Ustream. And Seth put up, there's another link there, Jenny and others. If you look, it says David Nickturn in my name. Click here to see all the comments and questions for this live broadcast on a separate page in your browser. So if you just clicked on that link that he put up there, that would accomplish your purpose. If you are doing it in the second window in your browser, then you just have to refresh that second window in your browser periodically, and you see the new comments and questions. Jenny, if you still have a question about that, I'll tell you. I'll give you a private class on how to do it. Okay, let's see. Wow. Okay. Colette Shand. I don't know if we've seen you before, Colette. Your name's not familiar, so maybe you're new to this, and if you are, welcome. Colette is saying, this is super. Staying with it, going deeper is resonating. I've just landed a new work gig, which is closer to my heart than ever. It's yoga-related work, and I can see my nervous mind with many, many wings juicing up and wanting to fly all over the place. Practice today was flighty, but I could witness over and over the wings. Great. Yeah, practice is what, you practice with whatever is happening, and, if somebody calls you right before you start sitting and they just said you just inherited $1 million, obviously that's going to bump your mind around a little bit. If you went to the doctor and they said, you have a cyst, that's going to bump your mind around a little bit. We're not trying to get to a neutral space in which life doesn't happen, but we can work with the energy of any of those things happening in our lives in a more stable way, in a more patient way, in a more compassionate, mindful way. That's the whole point. So that's a really good point. Thank you very much for sharing that. Let's see. We have a few minutes left, so maybe and there's a bunch more comments. So let's see what we got here. Wow, it's just so incredible to see you all this way. Patrick. Great to see you, Patrick. I'm so sorry to have been MIA these past few months. Well, just so you don't feel too bad, I was MIA for the last 6 weeks because I was in Maui for 3 weeks and then holidays. So you may have missed less than you think you did. I have to echo the comments about having a busy life. I just started a very intense graduate program this fall. Great, congratulations. I still manage to sit almost every day, 20 minutes or so before bed, but I'm a little sad that I don't have time for more study and practice. I don't think I'll even be able to attend the Sakyong's visit to our Sangha this month. I want to deepen my practice, but don't know if I'll be able to until this program ends 20 months from now. Any suggestions? Sounds great. And don't have to add extra anxiety to that, but relish, cherish when you do practice. Really put into application everything you've learned right then, so that you don't have to feel like you missed the boat. And during these times, if that's the reality of the next 20 months, it'll go by very quickly. It's shocking. I now plan a year or two in advance because time seems to just go very, very fast. And maybe at the end of that, you could, even now, schedule a retreat for the end of that period. So you cap it off with balance. You balance off the 20 months of study with some practice, a week or two at a center, or weekend even, or 5 days, whatever you can do. And if in the middle of that you have a chance to get away for a weekend and go for a deep practice, do it. Just take the, don't miss the opportunity to do that. But the daily practice is amazing. It's inspiring. What are you studying, I wonder? Yeah, maybe you could let us know what the graduate program is in. We can't save the world by meditating alone, So everybody learning and becoming adept at worldly things is part of our training too. Okay, let's see. We have time maybe for one more comment. And it would be Christy Kravitsky from Brooklyn. Yay. I've taken the Nike attitude in my practice this year. Just do it. Just sit and practice every day. I could just hear Rinpoche when just do it. He would say it like that. You can do it. That said, even though I've been sitting every day for a while now, my attitude towards practice is changing. My ambition about wanting more to be further along is almost run its course. We'll see about that. And I'm facing the situation of being bored and that there really is nothing else to do except to practice. Just do it. Oh, Christy, you just painted a target on your back, and now we have to get out the foosballs. The ink, what is the ink balls? Yeah, what can we say? What ambition, wanting it to be more. What else could grind your ambition better than meditation? You don't get forever. Even if you have an amazing experience meditating, you can't keep it. There's nowhere to put it. Unless you just want to tell people about it in your books and things or at your workshops. There's nowhere to put it, so it's just an experience that arose and dissipated. And the recognition that that's what experience does, and if you have to go through a boredom portal to get there, it's recommended by our lineage to go through the boredom portal. First the hot boredom, then the cool boredom. So it sounds good, and it just sounds like that feeling of grinding down or the ambition wearing down is what every great meditator and every mediocre meditator has gone through. So glad to hear it, Christy, and we can start from there next time we chat, okay? That'll be our ground zero for the next chat. So dear friends, wow, I'm quite moved at the moment and sort of, happy that you all are still out there and came back and that we can have these conversations. So let me know. I've got 4 of these coming up, and then I'm going to Thailand for a month. So I don't know if I can do it from Thailand. Maybe we'll even try. We should at least try one from there. I think if I do it at 7 a.m., it'll be 7 p.m. for you guys. But you guys are all over the world anyhow. So thank you so much for your practice and for your curiosity and for listening to me ramble around. I'm happy to extend myself any way that I can to share our lineage and our tradition and back you up, so to speak, in terms of your quest, your adventure. And if you have any great ideas for topics, just email me. You guys know davidnickturn@gmail.com. It's probably better than a Facebook message. And if it gets lost in a crack because I'm moving around, send it again, please. And I apologize in advance. So all the best, and I'll see you next Tuesday night. We'll be talking about, which will be the 20th of January, we'll be talking about sacred embodiment, the notion of deity yoga, deities, in the tantric tradition, and in other cultures as well. Okay, so have a great evening, great week, and I'll see you all soon.